Okay, let's jump right in. We're looking at something really fundamental, but maybe not obvious. Ship safety when the unexpected hits. Think about these huge vessels, right, out at sea. And then suddenly, maybe a key crew member has a serious emergency, has to leave mid-voyage. How do they keep things safe without that person? It sounds, well, potentially chaotic, but there's actually a system.
Yeah, it's quite something how structured the international maritime rules are. They're designed exactly for these kinds of, unpredictable moments. We've got a document here that gets into safe manning and this other thing called dispensations.
Right.
So we're doing a bit of a deep dive into the mechanics, the behind-the-scenes stuff that keeps things safe, even under pressure.
Absolutely. And that's our goal today, really, to understand the system. What does safe manning even mean? And then tackle that challenge. Sudden crew departures, and how this dispensation idea works as a sort of controlled, temporary fix. But always keeping safety front and center.
Exactly. So at the heart of it, the source material says safe manning is the absolute minimum number of qualified people a ship must have at all times. It's like the baseline crew you need just to operate safely. And it's required by international law, things like SOLAS, safety of life at sea.
And it's not just like the captain and the officers, right? The document makes that clear. It's across all the departments, making sure you've got competent people covering navigation, engineering, safety drills, pollution prevention, everything critical.
That's it. It's the foundation, the essential people needed just to sail safely. But like you said, life happens. The real world isn't always neat. The source talks about these unexpected sign-offs.
Yeah.
Someone gets suddenly ill or there's a family emergency back home. They have to leave the ship now. And often they're nowhere near a major port.
Which creates this immediate problem, right?
Yeah.
You're suddenly below that minimum safe manning level you just mentioned. And finding a qualified replacement when you're, say, mid-Pacific, that's not exactly easy.
Not easy at all. So the system needs a mechanism, a way to handle that temporary gap without everything falling apart, safety-wise. And that's where this dispensation process, as the document calls it, comes into play.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Because it's not just an informal nod.
No.
It's a formal thing.
Yeah.
The ship operator actually has to apply, right? To the ship's flag state, the country where it's registered. They need explicit permission.
Precisely. It's a controlled step. And crucially, the source really stresses this. Getting permission, a dispensation, it's not a free pass, it's time limited. It lets the ship sail temporarily with one less person, basically, which leads to the big question.
How can you possibly allow that? Operating below the minimum required crew and still call it safe?
That's exactly what the document details. It lays out the strict conditions under which a dispensation can even be considered, let alone granted. It's definitely not automatic.
Okay, so what are those conditions?
Well, the source lists a few key ones. First, the impact on safety must be minimal, and they have to prove it. This means doing a proper, documented risk assessment, showing how even short-handed, the remaining crew and the ship's systems can maintain, an acceptable safety level.
So it forces them to really analyze how the remaining crew will cover the duties, assess if they can actually handle the extra load safely.
Yes, exactly. Their ability to adapt and manage is critical. And importantly, these dispensations aren't forever. They have a strict time limit. Usually it's only valid until the ship reaches the next suitable port, the next place where they can realistically get a qualified replacement on board. It's a temporary bridge, not a permanent solution.
A bridge to the next port, basically. Makes sense. What else?
And the source also mentions robust emergency planning. Even with that dispensation, the ship needs clear contingency plans. What if something does go wrong while they're operating short? They need to have thought that through.
Right, so putting it all together.
What the document really shows is that these dispensations, they aren't loopholes or ways to cheat the system. They're managed controls. They're used carefully under very specific monitored conditions. The priority, always, is keeping up the highest possible safety standards with qualified people, even when something unforeseen happens.
So you start with this really solid planning the safe manning rules. Then you acknowledge that, hey, unexpected stuff happens. And then you have this controlled, temporary response, the dispensation, all guided by law, risk assessment, strict conditions. It really shows the layers involved in managing safety at sea. It's complex.
It really is. It's a great example, I think, of building a system that's strong in its core requirements, but also has this built-in intelligent adaptability, controlled adaptability, when the unpredictable nature of, life at sea intervenes.
That combination. Rigorous planning, plus that controlled flexibility. It makes you think, doesn't it? How does that principle maybe apply elsewhere, in other high-stakes areas? Maybe even in how you approach planning for the unexpected in your own work or life. Something to ponder.